everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Genevieve Hoffman, and I'm part of the Office for Creative Research. And I'm going to go through sort of a few projects that I think might be interesting to the crowd today. Our studio, just to give you a little background, was founded in 2013 by Jer Thorpe, Ben Rubin, and Mark Hansen. And we're a pretty small team and very diverse in terms of discipline, with people coming from architecture, interaction design, film, performance, and the nonprofit worlds. We work with various clients, so we do things for print publications, corporations, academic partners, and nonprofits. And we also have studio-driven projects which we fund internally. We publish a journal every year, which is on sale currently. And so we create everything from interactive touchscreen sort of data visualizations, like you can see here, to permanently installed artworks, to live performances, and to print publications distributed globally. Here's the first copy of the OCR journal, and the second one you can find online. So one of the reasons I think I was invited to speak to you today is the first project I worked on when I joined OCR was a data visualization for Scientific American that Jen Christensen commissioned for the 100th anniversary of the publication of Einstein's field equations, which provided the basis for the general theory of relativity. And so the goal of the visualization, we prototyped a few directions, but what we arrived at was we really wanted to speak to the effect of the general theory on physics research today. So we're a data visualization shop, so we needed a database. So we looked to archive.org. It's sort of a publicly accessible, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, where people can upload papers and peer review them. And so we pulled all the articles tagged with the general relativity quantum cosmology tag and uploaded to the site in 2014. So we ran all the article abstracts through an API that pulled out key concepts in each abstract. And so you can kind of see the scores for each concept used across all 2,435 papers. And then we culled these to about 60 key concepts that we found to be relevant to general relativity. And then we reanalyzed those papers in order to see and lay them out according to which key concepts that they reference. So to do this, we used a gravitational simulation, sort of as a shout out to Einstein also. And so the basis for this is that two concepts referenced in the same paper had some sort of affinity, and certain concepts were ascribed more mass or gravitational pull based on the numbers of papers they were mentioned in. And so the various papers were attracted to the concepts that were in their own abstracts, but due to a circle packing algorithm, were sometimes landed in between them. So while we used a 3D simulation to create the visualization, this is the final visualization that made it to print. And so even though it was created in 3D, it's really most legible from a top and a side view. And so the top allows you to see the concepts and the relevant papers laid out in XY space. And the side view lets you see the concepts which had the most papers reference them. So the sort of top one with the shortest tail is black holes. So the most research done in 2014 is around black holes. We also created an interactive version of the visualization for the web, just to allow people to explore the data in 3D, much as we were used to doing. So you can select different concepts to see which papers reference them and sort of roll over the articles to actually get the citation, and it will link back out to archive.org. And so we decided to include a screen tour just to give some indication of what users could do with the visualization. We felt this would be sort of helpful to explain what's going on because the visualization is pretty complex. It's not always a technique we'd go to first, since it's also nice to create things that are more discoverable, but at times it comes in handy to have more guided introductions to an interactive. So yeah, that is still online, which you can get to from Scientific American's website. So this project also taught me a lot about the different needs when designing visualizations for print versus something people will experience online. So this 3D sort of immersive angled view where you can see multiple sides all at once by interacting with it is great for something on the web, but is pretty hard to read in print. And so the 3D visualization is kind of acting as this eye candy, this like cue for people to maybe want to dive in deeper, and then the top and the side view are really what contain the information. So the next project I want to talk about is called Patterns, Predictions, and Poop. It's an interactive narrative and game to teach people about viral diversity and prediction. So to give you some context, Dr. Simon J. Anthony, who's a virologist and professor of epidemiology at Columbia, came to us with a request to help explain some of his recent research that he'd written about viral diversity. So his study followed groups of macaques in Bangladesh, in areas where they were likely to come into contact with human populations. And the researchers collected virus samples by picking up the macaque's poo and basically putting it in a freezer to preserve the viruses and then later evaluate the samples. And while the research is really fundamental to understanding and hopefully presenting zoonosis events, which are outbreaks of viruses that have traveled from one species of hosts to another, it also required these scientists to pick up a lot of monkey poop, which we thought could potentially kind of bring some levity to the narrative. So enter the poop emoji. We relied on this design element quite a lot. But just to take a step back, our primary goal in developing this piece was really to promote an understanding of the conditions necessary to even start making predictions. So you basically have to cover a lot of ground before you can say, there's a pattern in place, this is a prediction, I'm going to say these viruses are related or not. So we had to kind of step back and really focus on teaching concepts about stochasticity and deterministic data sets. So trying to explain the intricacies of scientific research to a general audience can be challenging, especially trying to create something that explains these ideas while preserving some of the complexities of the research as well. So choosing the audience that we were really trying to tailor this to is helpful. To try and focus the type of experience you're looking to create. But then the challenge is also creating something that multiple audiences or ages of people can really understand and engage with. So our target for this ended up being sort of older elementary school age children and their parents. So we took two approaches. There were some key areas that we wanted to cover, and we needed to step through the scientific process of how you can even start making these predictions. So we went with a voiceover narrative, which seemed like a good way to step through these complex ideas and distill out some of the important aspects we wanted to cover. And then we also wanted a way to cement some of these ideas. So we looked to sort of gamify the experience a bit more after we'd laid out some of this information. So these narratives kind of also contain animation, which really helps build a more lifelike feeling, sort of engaging feel for the experience. Oops. And shout out to my coworker Noah, who is responsible for a lot of the coding in this piece. It's sitting right there. Sorry.
Patterns and predictability.
Yeah, here's a little bit of a sample.
The viruses present in macaques spotted a few patterns. Dependence. Some viruses can't replicate in a host without the presence of other viruses. Imagine that there is a relationship between the green virus and the purple virus. The green virus needs the purple virus to be present in order to make copies of itself. Let's focus on just two hosts, one with the purple virus and one without. If an adenovirus is not already present in a host, when the dependovirus comes along, it can't replicate. Bye-bye, dependoviruses.
So that's just a little sample. We have kind of a way to lead you into sort of that information, but one thing that we did want to do with this piece, is this playing? after you kind of get this narrative overview, you enter this sort of interactive game. And here we have another way of telling you what you can do in the game. But the general idea is we've taught you about sort of how you can start drawing conclusions about predictions and whether you can say this virus is present because another virus isn't, or this virus needs another in order to be present in a community of hosts. So we sort of have this little game-like interface that you can try and guess, is there a relationship between the green and the purple? And if there is, great, but if there's not, try again. And so one of the things we really wanted to do, sorry I turned off the sound because of the voiceover, but adding sort of these little sound effects to the viruses really kind of helps add a different dimension. It improves accessibility, so some people are more used to spotting visual similarities or differences. That might be a good way for them with color, but sound can also provide a nice complement and also musicality to the experience. So the next project I want to share with you is called the Elephant Atlas, which is a project we recently put out in September that visualizes the Great Elephant Census, which is an endeavor to count the number of savanna-dwelling elephants across the continent of Africa. And so this was really tailored to, it had a specific goal. It was trying to encourage a bunch of countries who were meeting at a conference to decide not to stop the ivory trade. And we wanted to relay how the numbers were collected for this census. But it was also a very complicated story we were trying to tell, and we quickly discovered just how complex the systems underlying elephant conservation are. There's different individual country policies to global climate change, to even just the importance of a single airplane needing to be calibrated in the correct way. So the only way to do the complexity and importance of this project justice and to explore and explain all of these things, sort of the macro and micro levels, to users at the same time, was really creating a platform for users to be able to ask their own questions and make their own discoveries and feel sort of connected to this unprecedented amount of data. So what we wanted to do was create a visualization really aimed at these delegates who are going to be voting on whether to ban the ivory trade in their countries. And we also wanted to create an API that would allow sort of a more scientific audience access to this census data, like conservation experts or other scientists working in the field. And so just to dive into our process a little bit, first we had many rounds of brainstorming and prototyping. So first with the goal of bringing the data collection around the Great Elephant Census to life. The aerial surveys take kind of an impressive amount of human effort, and it's just an interesting story in and of itself. We also thought about communicating elephant population loss and just how extreme it's been since 1979, as well as ways to let people understand how different countries across Africa compare in terms of their elephant populations. We've talked about different interaction patterns, sort of one that leads you through step by step, sort of a snowfally approach, and then one that was really space-driven, so this physicality of zooming in and out of these countries would really convey the various scales and factors at play. And then in thinking about the API, we also envision different interfaces which allow sort of both academics looking for deep information and delegates who might want just an executive summary to have things they could take away in order to spur further action. Yeah, so this is a screen capture of the website, which is live at elephantatlas.org. And so this first sort of phase really dives in deep and shows you sort of the methods for how this elephant census was taken, where you can follow along on an aerial flight transect. So these planes fly in these straight, very planned lines, about 200 millimeters apart, and they're just looking out the window and counting elephants. So it's very much like a human endeavor. So then we zoom back out and you can see this transect lines and then the elephants that were identified in that region. There's also another section that looks at sort of the context. It looks at other factors in addition to, the ivory trade and poaching that might be responsible for elephant population loss, such as just human conflict in areas that, where they're living, habitat loss because of farming. And so the visualization here, which I think we're going to dive into shortly. Sorry, it's hard to time with the the video. Or no, did we already go there? Maybe it was running while I was talking. But what I like about this, oh yeah, there we go. Click on it. Okay, good. So if you scroll down here, you get this sort of timeline overview of these different factors sort of since 1979 that research has shown have impacted elephant population loss. So as you roll over each of these times, you sort of see a visualization on the side that kind of helps you understand the story of like, okay, did the elephant population go up at this moment or did it go down? How do we sort of figure out how all of these factors are working together to impact these animals? So there's one more project I want to share with you today, and sorry if I'm rushing through them, but don't have too much time. This I wanted to share because it shows sort of what role visualization can play during medical studies that require ongoing patient participation. So this project is called Cloudy with a Chance of Pain, and it was created in partnership with the University of Manchester, and it aims at determining whether there's actual causation between weather and arthritis symptoms. So it's sort of been an old wives' tale for many years that, when it's humid or the weather, it's going to rain, that people's joints start aching, but there's never actually been scientific data to back this up. So these scientists, sort of with the help of a design studio that specializes in quantified self-tracking apps, they developed a study and needed sort of thousands of patients to take part in this data collection effort. So each day, participants in the study log their symptoms into this application. And so a symptom report can include sort of 10 different metrics related to their pain level, such as fatigue, stiffness, and just overall well-being. The app, which is the clever part, also collects geolocation data from the device's GPS. So at the same time each symptom is submitted, you also get a report about the location's weather record at that time. And so it was our job to then visualize this information and start to see if there might be any links between weather and pain. So our first goal was kind of building a visualization to help people understand these relationships. And then the other part to encourage engagement with the data was to create this citizen science sort of platform so people could analyze other patient data and submit their own hypotheses. So the first thing OCR did was create a simple interface where participants can visualize their own symptoms in 2D. And so the 2D view, which I think you started with, gives you a week's worth of symptoms, and then you can kind of scroll through this 3D landscape, which shows you up to 750 participants' data at once to sort of see the similarities and differences throughout the week. Also, to keep public engagement going, we publish multiple just sort of infographic sketches as email newsletters, sort of exploring diverse aspects of the project, like, can we find any links in this early data set? Or like, where are the cities where it's even just rained the most? Or how consistently do people actually record their symptoms? And so these small visualizations really helped deepen at least our understanding of the data. And then for the citizen science component, we asked patients to compare first their own personal records. So you can select an option where you think, your pain level is probably influenced by humidity. You can sort of qualify that hypothesis. And again, it's just a very simple interface, more tuned to engagement than real kind of findings. But, you can enter that hypothesis and submit it to the scientists to actually look at themselves. But then you get the opportunity to sort of look at this other patient's data and really kind of look at both their pain records and the weather side by side, which is kind of where you can really start looking at these relationships and trying to determine if there are any in the data to support the study. So I hope that these projects have sparked some ideas for creating engagement with scientific content and data, sort of through interactivity, games, immersive content, and other formats. Because while data visualization is really at the core of what we do as a studio, we find that we're more often concerned with helping people understand complex ideas, and visualization is just one way of doing that. And so we definitely don't want to dumb things down for our audiences, but we believe that there are engaging ways for people to learn science and really promote data literacy. And I think the arts and design are really integral to that. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you.